Okay. Um, okay. Um, so with that in mind, I picked a quote. But before that, before we go into that one, any questions or anything that you want to say based on last week's discussion? Anything you want to add? Okay, we'll move on. So this is a quote from Swami on renunciation. So I would like somebody to read. Om, why don't you read, please?
Pleasure with sacrifice. The Isvasya Upanishad proclaims that all should pleasures should be enjoyed with a feeling of renunciation. Upon casual inquiry, pleasure and renunciation seem to be opposites. A renunciant does not crave for pleasure, and a pleasure seeker cannot even entertain thoughts of sacrifice. Therefore, you might ask, how can one enjoy pleasures with an outlook of sacrifice? The Isvasya Upanishad reveals that when you perform actions without ego and when you experience the world without attachment, no distinction remains between pleasure and renunciation. Work without ego and attachment is selfless work, a pleasurable sacrifice. All selfless work is nothing but delightful renunciation. Every person must perform actions without the egoistic feeling. These are the results of my action. When one considers the action as one's own, it is natural to take credit for the results and get attached to them. The Svasya Upanishad demonstrates that yoga, the path to knowledge of the self, is the merger of renunciation and pleasure. Pleasure with renunciation is most in most important. Sacrifice is the soil in which divine traits of man sprout. Instead of treating the Upanishads s- statements as worthless dry grass, people should try to live them in their daily life and thereby watch divinity dawn in themselves.
Yeah. So here, I think what Swami says is the renunciant. So what pleasure with sacrifice. So when we sacrifice the fruits of our action, then that is we get the pleasure. So that is basically that is the renunciation. The renunciation is the fruits of the action, but the action itself should be done by us. This is what I understand from what you had mentioned last time. See, the usual thinking is Swami acts through me. So you don't take the ownership of the action. You attribute the divinity or the God as doing the action through you, or doing the action. And but the results, so what he says, from what I understand, is it's very difficult to distinguish the action. So I do the action, but the results are not mine. That is the correct thing. I don't know how far we will be able to do that. So when we do the action, but the results are not mine. So you don't take the ownership of the results, you take the ownership of the action. So that is the so you renounce the results of your action. I think that's what in Gita also, that's what Krishna says, that you have the duty to do your work. So Arjuna, he says you have to fight, but what happens at the end is not under your control. That is not so. But how do we, okay, that's the thing. Let's open for discussion. But I just thought I will bring a point. So every person must perform actions without the egoistic feeling. these are the results of my action. How can we practice this? So let's see if we can think about it. So basically, what we have to do is we do the action. So action has to be done by each one of us. When we say there is a goal, so we all have, for example, we have to prepare the food for, we have to prepare lunch. So we have to do all the cutting, chopping the vegetables and making all that. So those are all actions done by us. We have to do it. So we can one way to attribute is the Lord is doing the work through us. That is one way. Or you can just say, I am doing the work. But how that food turns out to be is not on our control. So whether we can delink these two is the thing. How can we practice that? So if we are able to do that, I think we are not affected by the results of that action.
See, the original question was,
Siren.
how would you prevent misdeeds being attributed to God and not to yourself? People will take advantage of this saying that God is doing through me. How will you prevent misdeeds being attributed to God, not to yourself? How will you prevent it? That was the original question. So, is there any norm? Are there any? So that's why I feel the answer would be one should follow the norms set by the society, by the gurus, by the teachers, by Lord Himself. Unless we follow those rules, we can easily escape taking the responsibility. So that's why we need the gurus and readings and satsang so that we get aware and repeatedly train our mind to be aware of what's good and what's bad. Once we are aware of this, then this theory applies. Otherwise, this theory will be defeated if we start to take advantage of it and doing our own wishes and put it on God.
I fully agree with you. That's perfect. So, but what is a misdeed? That is, let's see, that is that based on the society. For example, a butcher killing an animal because that is his business, meaning that is what he has to do it, whether he likes it or not, but he is doing it. So now in that case, is that the norm? That probably is the norm, but if you look at it from some other standpoint, that may be like gruesome. So which is right? Which is the deed? Which is the correct deed? Which is the misdeed? So how do we distinguish it?
I feel one thing is, I feel if you really truly feel that you're in tune with God, whatever you're doing, you will not do wrong things. Every wrong thing you will think from God's perspective, is it right or wrong? How would God think about it? So that way we may have a less chance of being on the wrong track.
Who will define that? That is the problem coming. Watch the new movie which just came in, Maharaj. Exactly, that's what happened. That's how the prathas had been distorted. They got distorted because people do not come to know this is right or this is right. Okay, just because the Guruji or Maharaj is saying that, they became the traditions and they. So who will decide what is right and wrong? I need to know the answer. Who will decide that? A butcher is killing the animals. That's his profession. But if he starts to kill the mankind, who will tell him this is not the right thing? Who will tell him?
I think I mean, from what I can see, it's their own. It's the conscience that is sitting in each one of us. That, I mean, if you look at the common law that is set up, that itself is based on this only. So when the majority or when all the people feel that it is right, then it becomes the correct. When all of the people feel that it is not right, for example, hitting somebody, or forget about killing, but hitting somebody, like injuring somebody deliberately, okay, that is considered wrong because everybody feels that it is wrong. So who decides? I think the society decides, and that one can change from time to time. What used to be right, like 2000 years back, may not be right now, or what is right now may not would not have been right 2000 years back. So that also can change with time. Not everything is universally true all the time. So I think that this one is high. Okay, okay, I'll do. Yeah, yeah, please. Pass the mic.
Sairam, so every statement or a law is a contextual to the time and also contextual to the situations. So I think like, okay, we are going through the disclosures of size, which have been written like, okay, like could be like 30, 40 years or whatever it is. So we all talk about modernizations and all these things. Like, so even these things, like during that specific timings, it could have been written in such a contextually during that time. But these things like to define what is right, as Manoj is asking, like who defines what is right and wrong? I don't think so. Like someone really defines this is the period for this statement. This can evolve. So everything is nothing like okay, there is the end for this thing. So these keeps evolving, maturing, and we keep changing these things as time moves and situation happens. So I feel like there is nothing like okay, these are the things, principles which we need to follow. As we keep moving, it keeps changing. That's
So
what I
that, so taking that forward, what Venkatji has mentioned, that is the problem, or that is the query. So, so we can always change that at our wish and at our convenience. Taking that this is the situations have evolved now, so we don't want to follow what Sai has mentioned 30 years ago. Now situation is different, so we don't need to follow this particular context. Our context is now different. That's what is happening, and that's what is creating problems actually. The- Now today, what would we do if we will not follow this? The context will be, so that's what he's indicating. That's what he's indicating, that now situations are different. Now we can always say that we have evolved out of it, but that should not be allowed actually. We have to honor what the gurus have
So,
said. We have to honor that.
so I that there are some things that change, right, over the period of time. Like, for example, Brahmins were supposed to do Agnihotri every day, create the fire and do that, all those things you are supposed to do. You have to do Sandhya Vandanam, 3 times a day. You have to follow that. That is kind of not possible now because the Brahmins are not doing what they are supposed to do. That they are now into workforce. So what I'm saying is that there are two parts of it. One is that absolute truth that never changes, and there are some things that the society has created that keep evolving and changing, right? So we have to understand that aspect of it. And so once we understand what is the actual truth, the truth is that we are in a spiritual journey and our focus should be on that. Then based on that is what we need to think about, because there are so many gray areas. It's not totally black and white, everything. So many gray areas are there. So the focus is, where is my thought? Is my thought egocentric? You know, that's all I can think of now about the butcher. Butcher killing. That is a societal thing. I really don't um want to judge that butcher in any way, right? That is his job. He is doing it. He's supposed to judge himself if he feels that's wrong. But that is society, and there are laws to make the society. For me, my thought process is, what is it? What are the actions? What is my thought? Where is my thought going? How can I make it, God centric? So there are two aspects to it. If we go into the societal part, that is a completely different, that keeps changing. That is, that is not the truth. As Swami says, that is not the truth, and that is not we need to focus on. That is my personal thought.
So I feel it's a temporary. Whatever the butcher is playing is like his profession. Yeah, that's what it is fine. Nothing like that's why it's small role.
Yeah, about this killing being wrong. In a war, killing is perfectly fine and valorous. And Krishna says you'll get a lot of fame if you kill your relatives. So that is like a contextual, like you said. I don't think certain things change through the time. Um, Humanity, compassion, love, maybe forgiveness. These are probably throughout the ages. But everything, if you put your ego down and let God work through you, it probably would be the right action. What my confusion is, in the previous thing you showed, it says pleasurable actions, bhoga, should be enjoyed with tyaga. Does bhoga mean like duty, or does it mean like simple, like listening to music or a play or
Whatever.
going
Yeah,
for
yeah.
a party? or
That's how
what?
I understand. Bhoga is anything that gives materialistic pleasure. Like, for example, listening to music or eating good food. So it gives some kind of a pleasure, but that is not the if you look at it in the first one, that that is equivalent to materialistic pleasure is not the one. So basically what he's saying is the pleasure you get in sacrificing is what leads you to real pleasure. And for that is the real renunciation. Renunciant is what we need to renounce is the 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 fruits of the action. So in other words, you sacrifice that, you do the sacrifice, and then you derive the pleasure in that. That is the pleasure that is going to be long standing. So all the pleasures that we get into materialistic one is all temporary, and it's not really a pleasure. That's how I understand.
Yeah, I agree that once you have renunciation and you have no ego, no me or mera, then the real ananda arises from you. Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah.
See, one thing that runs through all of us, everyone, all the time, is the conscience. So Baba has always said, follow your conscience, that is the voice of the God in you, right? We may not hear it all the time, we are not used to it, but in our ordinary life, no big thingy around, ordinary life, if we have to make a decision, we can get in touch with our own conscience. How do I really feel about it? What is it? That answers that brings good, correct answers. It'll never take you on the wrong path if you are in touch with your conscience, which is the voice of the God. And we can, of course, we can confuse it with the mind. Yes, we can confuse it with the mind. But if we work towards listening to the conscious all the time for little things, then we may make better decisions, more peaceful decisions in us, I feel.
Yeah, and the whole challenge is listening to the conscience, and that how do you distinguish between what the mind says versus what the conscience says? So that is where the challenge comes. It's
But-
not that easy to
Right.
distinguish between these two.
Baba had said, somebody had asked that, I read or heard, I don't remember. Baba, somebody asked, what is the difference between what you are telling, Baba, and what the mind is telling? So Baba said, what God tells you, that will be stable in you. What the mind tells you, you will waver, because the mind wavers all the time. But when it will come from the higher source or God source, or what Swami says, that will stay. That will, because it is correct, right? Mind can waver. So he said that is one way you can understand, okay, where is it coming from? That's what I think.
It's me, this retreat, Arvind Balasubramanian, he said that you can easily figure out whether it is conscience or whether it's mind. So how do you figure out? Conscience, when it says something, it is not going to explain why it is you should do this task. It is not going to tell you, oh yeah, you do this because this is good, this is what. Whereas when it comes from mind, it tries to tell you if you do this, this is why you should do. This is, it will give you all the explanations of why you need to do that. 100 different explanations it will give you, right? Whereas if that is a conscience, it will say that is the right thing to do. That's all, and it will stop speaking. So that's when you will know whether it is the mind or whether it is the conscience that is telling, which makes sense to me, right? So the thing is that for me, I know clearly what my goal is, but the goal is to quieten the mind, quieten the thoughts, right? But even though I know that that is the ego that is speaking loudly, still not able to quieten it, and they say, the great souls say that, you just be the witness, but even unable to be the witness because the mind is like constantly talking. How do you quieten that mind? How do you, not let the ego self talk about? If I'm deviating it, let's stop this question and let's move on. But another thing I wanted to say is Vihan had a question too, which we need to address.
Okay. What is that question? Okay. Okay. So yeah, I think that's a good question about. I mean, we talked about distinguishing between what the mind says versus what the conscience says. We had talked about it before also, but Arvind, so this one, if you had not listened to it, I think please listen to it. It's really good. The way he says, it's also really good. But coming back to this, so uh, the question is, how do we practice this? Every person must perform actions without the egoistic feeling. These are the results of my action. So that is the egoistic feeling. When we do something and when it happens, we say, I did it. Okay. How can we delink that? Do your action, perform the action that is completely your responsibility. As Krishna says in the war field, Arjuna, you have to fight. But whether he will win or not is not under his control. When he strikes the thing, he aims. So for example, you're shooting something, you're shooting, but whether that arrow is going to hit the target is not under your control. So, and even if it hits it, you should not be affected by it. Even if it fails, you should not be affected by it. So the results is, you should not be attached to the results. You should be doing your work completely, taking that ownership of the work, but not attaching anything to that result. How can we practice that?
Maybe if we do not all the time say, I am doing it, just do it, whatever is doing, and do it. But instead of in the mind always, I am doing, I'm doing, I did this, if we can cut that I out, maybe even in our talking all the time, it may help. Plus, if you're not attached to what will come out of it, that helps. Good or bad, both can come out. Are you ready for it? I remember one thing, a long time going back. My father used to always say, if you have to make a decision and you don't know what to do, so he showed a very good path. He said, in your mind, decide, think. Worst comes to worst, what will happen if you do this? So I decided, worst is I will fail. I'm joining the class, I want to go, but worst is that I will fail. And he said, can you handle that? I said, yeah, I can handle it. He said, go, do it. In other words, you're prepared already for the worst comes to worst of whatever your action may be. If it comes out good, very nice. But if you fail, if you didn't make it, you were prepared for that. So that's the way he made us many times take an action, decide. Worst comes to worst, what will happen? This. Can you handle that? Yeah, I can handle it. Go do it. And literally say, go do it. So what happened? You were prepared for the, and we had never had any problem making decisions. This is the worst comes to, I can handle it. Or I cannot, then don't take the decision. Then don't do.
Was it Ashaji or was it God? Was it your conscience or was it you with your ego?
This is
Was it
just
you with your ego? Yes or no?
no. Ego, we at that age, we did not need know even the word ego. At that age, I'm talking when we were kids. Didn't know the word what is
So I
ego.
want to clarify that part. When you say that, you are always considering this is me.
Yeah.
That's why you say it. So what Swami is saying, we have to elevate from that level of considering this as me to the Atmic level. Whenever we say that I can do it, are you saying it as this, as Manoj, as this body? You're considering this as you, or you are considering yourself as that Tattvamasi topic?
No.
We are now confusing here. Whenever we do all these worldly things, we are we doing it as me, myself, or a representative of him? Have we elevated to that level that we have started to connect that well? Then only that theory of what Somaji was
Yeah.
said has said would be true. Otherwise, we are creating confusion in the society that my conscience is saying this, so this is right. His conscience is saying this, he is right. I have not to listen to my mind. This is my conscience. So I'm listening to my conscience. Will say, I'm listening to my conscience. So we have to build those norms, what is right and what is wrong. That's what Guruji has mentioned. Otherwise, everyone will create their own conscious rules. He will create his own conscious rules. I will say, my conscience is saying this. He will say, my conscience is saying this. So what is right and what is wrong?
See,
That's what
what
Guruji
I'm
have to.
going back is more at that age, or we never heard the word ego. Somewhere, to be very honest, we were simply taught how to make a decision, simple decisions. And we had, should I do it or not? Should I? So what I feel is not from the level of God at that time. We had no idea what God is doing. I'm got nothing at all. Forget it. God is there. Everything is okay. But we didn't understand all this thing at that age. And it was on this personal level. I wanted to go to college, medical and all that thing. Go if something doesn't happen, can you handle it? It's okay. His way was made it very easy for us to make decisions. We didn't get into I and the ego and God and nothing at all. Simple, honest level. Can you do it? Yeah or not? That's all.
Yeah. No. I agree. That's what you're explaining. What based on what your father told you. But I think Manoj's ji's question is, how do we distinguish between if we say that God is working through me, and that's why I am doing this. Are we really is are we at the stage, or are we evolved to that extent that we really feel God working through us? When will we feel that way? When we are completely cut off from our mind, and when we are not listening to the mind, between listening to the mind and the conscience, when we completely follow the conscience, then we can really say God is working through me. Because the same conscience is there in everyone. If not me, if it is Manoji or Bhargav, he would have done the same thing. If he had also followed the conscience. So what the problem comes in us following the mind and then saying that God is working for us.
So
That is the problem.
here, what I'm thinking is that we are talking at two different levels, right? So what Asha ji is saying is at the very base level, right? So at the time, there are when we talk about ego, there are two ways the ego shows. That's what I can understand from that, right? One is you're not self-confidence, that you are like egoistically confident. Like it's some people do that, anything you ask them, I can do that, this can be done, that can be done. And some people are so scared of that failure. That is also an ego part of it. So when we are talking about that level, at that time, when you are tightening the ego by saying, okay, I'll accept the failure, right? and then you go from there. So you have to come step by step. I think she's talking about that part where we are all there, right? Either we are overconfident, not self-confident, we are overconfident and we are like, I can be done this on XYZ. Or we are like so introverts, we are so scared to even speak because we are worried that we'll say something that's not right, right? And then it will put us down. What is that put us down? That is ego again talking. But when you evolve from that part slowly, and then you try to look at your actions, right? And then you are saying, is this action right? Right? Then that action is at your level of that sphere, right? You cannot say who is telling you right and wrong. It is your understanding because you are slowly as a spiritual soul, your soul is going through that journey. And each level, your soul, you are dictating your mind, your soul combined together is that spiritual journey, right? So you are telling yourself whether this is right or wrong. Of course, the society is also dictating. So, and so you are evolving from that. And eventually you have to come to that point where you understand what your ego is saying and what is not. So we both are all talking about the same thing, but at the different levels of
No, I understand. So the question that is coming up is um, whether it is right to say for somebody to say to do something and then says um, God is only doing it through me. Okay, that is the thing. That so can somebody do something and then say it's God is the one who is doing this? Okay, I am not doing it. Meaning, when can we say that? Can everybody say that? So that is the question. Manoji, am I right? That is the question, right? That is the question.
Sir, I feel like, see, we have created our names, identities. Probably like we have to erase our identities. That's a
Exactly.
identity, erasing of the identity is the.
Exactly. That is the ego.
So as long as we have the identity, any action will be attributed towards that identity. So if you erase that thing, then only you'll be.
Then only we can.
That's a,
exactly. That is perfect. That is the thing. So when can we do that? Yeah.
This identity won't work in the practical world. We have the 4 classifications. The banya or the business class will always look for a profit motive. He's not going to remove his identity, and the others too, I guess. So dealing with your emotions and your personal life, maybe you can uh, forget about practical and just do the most saintly sadhu type actions. But in the outside world, when you're a lawyer or a judge or a whatever, I don't know what kind of judgments you make.
From what I understand by his identity is the ego, that it is my, meaning Venkat. So the moment I say Venkat is doing it, so it's very difficult because it's very difficult to dealing that Venkat part or I part of it from the action. So when you are able to do it, then that will be, then you can say that it's the divinity that is working through me. It's a divine work. So that is in relation to this. So I think it's probably this discourse or the previous the next one, where he no, it's probably the next one. I think that's a good segue to move to the next one. Or anybody has anything to add? Yes.
Saira,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I understood completely the question, but like sometimes, like when we bring a picture of right and wrong, like we should, I think like we can perform the action without having a mindset of it's right or wrong. Because the moment we think the things that are right to me might not be right to the other person, and vice versa. Our actions when we perform, and then maybe that might be a result of what actions we did, to think in a conscious level, then before deciding that this is the right action I'm doing, where ego comes on picture and we try to define the other's action as wrong. So we need to put an effort to do our actions without having any frame of mindset, and then consciously think the actions, not attached to the results, and go from there. Because Vihan's question coming where he said like the same, like we do, you said God is in every person. And when he's in every form, why certain mistakes is being punished, but the same mistakes done by others are not punished. So if there is a God in everyone, why the mistakes are done, and why the punishment of right or wrong is not uniform?
Good question. Good question. Yes.
Coming back to what Manoj said, right? I think the actions, whatever you're doing, and again, at the same time, you are attributing everything, the result of the action you are attributing to the God is correct. But only thing that is applicable, I mean, that is true only when you are putting your best action. So what you said, right? The good deeds or bad deeds. Action can be done with a good deed or bad deed also. So if it is done with a good deed, and the result may be in a positive or negative, then you can attribute to God. But the same action, if you're doing with the bad intention, maybe bad deeds, then attributing that to God is wrong. So for example, I can quote one example of bhajan practice here, right? So we do the bhajan practice every day. I mean, before even presenting to in front of Baba, we do a lot of practice with good intention, right? Oh, this is the Shruti, this is the Raga, we should follow and get it approved. And when you sing the bhajan in front of, on the day of bhajans, normally, we have to give the best. So normally what I do, so before I sing a bhajan, I just pray to Baba. Okay, Baba, I'm not singing it. So you are singing through me. And whatever mistakes, but at the same time, when I tell Baba that you are doing it through me, I have to give my best, right? So the best ability I should sing. Oh, it's not that, oh, okay, already Baba is taking care of it. Okay, let me not follow this Shruti follow. Just leave it as it is. That is not correct. Whatever action you are doing, it should be to the best of your ability. And at the same time, I mean, in spite of that, if the action is going to be negative, then you can attribute to God.
Exactly. That's what I was trying to say. So everyone is doing their actions. We cannot non-specifically attribute it that it's coming from God. It's my conscience is saying this. We cannot non-specifically, rather arbitrarily put it on God. We have to have the norms. We have to have the norms. If Om is singing the bhajan, he's not singing it correctly. We have an authority here. Venkatji corrects him. If he says, no, my conscience is saying this, I'm still going to sing like this, he's going to do the wrong thing. So we need the authority. Venkatji is playing the role of authority, or actually the Sai rhythms, they have made some norms. The bhajan has to be sung in this manner. So we have to honor these authorities. That's why that's the only way to live it good, to sing a good bhajan. We need to follow the authority. Venkatji's authorities or Sai Rhythm's authority. That's an example I'm giving. Similarly, in life, we need to follow the authorities led by our gurus. That's what the whole creams comes from. We have to follow those authorities. Otherwise, that is the reason of the patan of dharma. We're not following our gurus. We are following our own norms and making another sect, another part of it. We're not following the original, the norms set by all those rishis. After a lot of research, they have put all those norms for us to make a good society. That was the whole idea. So obviously there would be some gray zone, as Soumyaji has mentioned. There would be some changes, and Venkatji has mentioned there would be some gray zones, but the original theme needs to be followed to make the good human being, to make a good society. That's the whole idea.
Very good, Sarah. See, the thing is, I was thinking, yeah, Ashaji.
I feel just as an experiment for all of us, when we make a decision, maybe we can stop for 30 seconds and think, Who made that decision? Did I make it? Or did I feel God is working through me? Or God made the decision? I have nothing to do with it. It just happened that He did it, good or bad, whatever. It might be interesting to evaluate your own decision. Simple one, doesn't have to be big. We don't do anything big anyway. So as an experiment, try a couple of them and make a decision. Now, who was it who did it? Did I do it? Did my ego did it? Or God did it through me? It'll be very interesting to look into our own self with simple decisions in life. That's what I think.
Good, sir. Okay, let's move to the next. This is the next discourse, which is kind of related. I think we are kind of segueing into this, so that's why I thought we'll move to this discourse. Why don't you, you want to read, or if you're okay? Why don't you read?
Person is not just a combination of body and mind. A person possesses constant pragyan, constant integrated awareness. Pragya, prajanana, pragyan is the permanent witness or awareness pervading the inner instrument. What is the inner instrument? The thinking faculty is categorized into four entities based on function: mind, intellect, memory, and ego. What is the mind? The mind is a bundle of thoughts. The mind continuously decides for and against issues. A cloth is made of vertical and horizontal threads comparable to like and dislikes. When the thread is extracted from one side, the cloth falls, falls apart. Similarly, pull out and discard the thread of thought, and the cloth of mind ceases to exist. This is expressed in our scriptures as repetition strengthens thoughts. We strengthen our mind by repeatedly remembering unnecessary matters. Next, memory. This is just a repository of past impressions. The third, intellect. The intellect is the link to the divine, discriminating between the temporary and the permanent. The fourth, ego, identifies with the body. Ahama, akarma is ahamka, ego. Ego merges the sense of individuality with the physical form. All four, mind, intellect, memory, and ego, are aberrations of the true mind. The one mind has four names. For example, a Brahmin is called a cook Brahmin when he specializes in cooking for feasts. The same Brahmin engaged in worship is called a priest. When imparting Vedic education, he is called a teacher. When reading a horoscope, he is called an astrologer. The Brahmin is one but based on his task, his name differs. The mind, intellect, memory, and ego are thus synonyms. The inner instrument is not a separately entity. It is part of our other instruments. Our senses are instruments pointed outward. The eyes see the external world, ears hear external sounds, and nose breathes air from outside. Similarly, the mind, intellect, memory, and ego are inner instruments. When the inner instruments is sacrificed, it does not matter if the external instruments contact worldly objects. This is exactly pleasure coupled with sacrifice. Oh,
So here, what he explains, Swami explains what is bhoga with tyaga. So see, there are senses. This is there are senses through which we connect with the outside world, like eyes, ears, all those things. And then there is the inner instruments, the mind, ego, all those things. So when we sacrifice this, the ahankara, the inner instruments, then we get the pleasure of, because we are in tune with, because we are not using our senses and our inner instruments. And then that is the definition that Swami says, that is the pleasure coupled with sacrifice. So when can we achieve that? So, I mean, anybody, before we even proceed, I mean, anybody has anything to add on this? Any question?
This is a very sophisticated topic. We should devote more time to it. We should not move. We should not move. Maybe for a couple of classes. We are not here to finish off the chapters. So please. So this is a, okay. We have 5 senses, which are the external ears. I mean, it's called ears, but it's not exactly ears. The 5 senses. The outer senses. The inner sense is called antahakaran. It's self-explanatory. Antahakaran. Karan is sense. That is divided into 4 parts. Man, buddhi, chitta, ahankar. This is one vritti which manifests in 4 forms, basically. Just like the example given. One Brahman is doing the worship, he's called Pujari. When he's doing the Vedic thing, he's doing the Acharya. So it's the same vritti. They are not 4 different vrittis. The same vritti, same person is doing these 4 jobs. This is very important to understand. This antahakaran ki shuddhi, antahakaran ki shuddhi is the key of it. Once we cleanse this vessel to the extent that the reflection of God becomes clear, this is the antahakaran. That is the key. The reflection of God gets so clear that you realize that Tattvam Asi, that is the moksha, that is the ultimate. So that, I mean, everyone understands at the same platform, that is the point where we have to reach. That's when the reflection of God and you, which is actually one only, it's being misinterpreted because of that confusion of Maya, because that vessel is not clear itself, is being manifested as a Jeev. So we have to reach to that level when Jeev and Paramatma becomes one, and that 4 Mahavakyas become true. 4 Mahavakyas, Tattvamasi, Aham Brahmasmi, they are meaning the same. We are one. That will be achieved only after the cleansing of that antahakaran, which is the creating that separation. At that level, it will be conscious God working through us. That would be that level.
Exactly. That is how that link is. So when can we really say that God is working through us? Is when we can, as you said, cleansing the inner antakaran, in the inner instruments, as Swami says. And when we do that, obviously all the senses, outward senses that we use will also be automatically cleansed. So when we cleanse those, then when we say cleanse, that means that is what Swami says is the renounce. So you renounce that. You renounce all these senses and the inner instruments. In that case, then you get the pleasure. That's what he says, pleasure. But that pleasure is because you are seeing that oneness. You're seeing the divinity in action. Because nothing is your doing. Everything is happening outside is the divine action. You're able to see that. And when you see that, you're able to enjoy that or see that pleasure. That's how all these, like Ramakrishna Paramahamsa or Vivekananda or Ramana Maharshi, they're all living in that. So they are always in pleasure. So none of their, even when they had the cancer, none of that affected them, their pleasure. They were still having that pleasure. They were going through that. That is the level to which we can go and we need to go. That's what I understand.
We are seeking anyways, but then we will realize that true pleasure, which is coming by that cleansing of that vessel and that connectivity, then we don't have to depend on the outer senses for that pleasure, which we are using right now. I'm having pleasure by speaking all this, but then we will not be having this pleasure by saying, by tasting, by sensing, by smelling. Then we'll have the pleasure because my original Swarup is that Ananda Swarup. That's where the Anand is there. I'm just attributing it to these material things. My own Swarup is the Anand Swarup. I am just confused because of my ego. My Antakaran is not Shuddh. I'm attributing it to all materialistic things. The ultimate goal is to find that level when we'll get pleasurable from inside only. That is that level we achieve. Yeah,
That's exactly that's the understanding. So let's see. So what should we actually renounce? So we are talking about renunciation. So that's the connection. I mean, the whole topic is the renunciation. What should we actually renounce? What is it that we should renounce? Attachments. Good. Okay. Anybody? Yeah.
Renounce I.
Renounce the ego.
Yeah,
I is ego.
Ego.
Good. Ego, attachments. Yes.
So I'm going to say that since for our daily our actions, karma, karmic actions that we do every day. Yeah, we do it with some selfish reason, but if we renounce the outcomes of that action,
Results
of that actions, I think we will be progressing in the right direction.
Okay. Renounce the results of the action. Okay. Okay. Yes.
Swami has explained very clearly what to sacrifice. The mind, intellect, memory, ego are the inner instruments. When the inner instrument is sacrificed, it does not matter if the external instrument contacts the worldly objects. Correct. So that is the point of sacrifice. Yeah. We have to reach to that point. That's what he meant. Correct. See, many times, you may be sitting in the class or you may be sitting in the movie theater. People will be, or you in the classroom, the person will be talking. Your ears will be hearing it, definitely. You will be seeing the board, but if your mind is somewhere else, nothing goes into the thing. And after that, if somebody asks you what happened in the class, you won't be able to say even one thing. So, it's 6 o'clock. Okay. I don't even realize the time. Okay, Sairam, I think we have to end. We will continue on this topic next, this one. But before that, I just want to know how many of you would be able to participate in study circle if held the next Saturday. I know I sent the WhatsApp. If that's the question, we have not decided yet. It will be only it's a 5th Saturday. Usually we don't have a Sai program on the 5th Saturday on a month. But we also want to continue with the study circle. We are committing to having 100 study circle sessions for Swami's 100th birthday. That is next year. Yeah, obviously. Yes. Prasad will always be there. Prasad will be there after the program. No, not threshold. I want at least a few people to be there because it's a study circle. It's not like I just want to know if there are more people coming that it can come. Then we can have we can be sure that we will have it. Otherwise, we may have to this one. That is why I just wanted. So please think about it. If you are going to, then please let me know. That way we can definitely have or decide. Yeah, I did send the poll, but I got some response, but not everybody has responded. That's the reason why I asked. Okay, Saira, we will end with the Om meditation. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti